years ago, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his speech on Independence Day 2019, raised a point about the rising population of India, triggering speculation about whether India was going to make population control legally compulsory. PM Modi talked about the willful planning of small families as patriotism, because our country is already under huge population pressure, followed by consequential crunch of both space and resources. Based on the PM's speech, discussion started whether the government was planning to focus on a population control bill in the coming months. However, even though a lot of politicians have raised this point after the speech in 2019, its implementation has always seemed rather idealistic and far-fetched. But on the occasion of World Population Day, on 11 July this year, UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath unveiled the state's population policy and announced its implementation. He said that population control was the need of the hour, and it was his government's aim to bring the birth rate down to 2.1% by 2026. Questions have often been raised about personal liberty and individual freedom while making such a choice compulsory by state. International media has often even interpreted India's effort for population control as an expression of Islamophobia. But we need to look at the broader picture here. Even though some stats might say that an increase in education and development might lead to a reduction in the fertility rate, it can be a long-winded process for a country like ours. Timely population control, however, can lead to better use of resources, an increase in education and overall quality of life. Yogi Adityanath too said how the population policy was not only about stabilizing the population, but also a means to bring happiness and prosperity in the lives of people. Uttar Pradesh currently has the highest population in any state in India, with 220 million people. While the policy has been passed, there is also a draft bill that has been proposed. The draft of UP Population Control Stabilization and Welfare Bill to 2021, which is available on the state government's website, has promotions to incentivize families that choose to limit their children to 2. This includes suggesting tax rebates for families with 2 or less children. While there are incentives for those with 2 or lesser kids, there are also disincentives for those with more. If you have more than 2 kids, you will be debarred from applying for government jobs, receiving subsidies, or contesting local body polls. If you're already a government employee, the implementation of this policy would mean that you will be debarred from future promotions. Suggestions from the public for the draft bill have been invited till 19 July, leading to a lot of reactions and debate. Last month, Iqbal Mahmood, the Samajwadi Party's MLA, said that any law on population control would be seen as a conspiracy against Muslims, that the CM's move was seen as an attack on Muslims in the garb of population control. The Vishwa Hindu Parishad too has written to the Uttar Pradesh State Law Commission opposing some parts of the proposed draft bill. It has strongly opposed incentivizing the one-child policy, writing, "A policy aiming at an average of less than 2 children per woman leads to a contraction of the population over time. Such contraction has several negative social and economic consequences." Elaborating on the negative consequences of the one-child policy, the VHP notes, "In the case of Uttar Pradesh, the one-child policy is likely to lead to furthering of the imbalance between different communities because they are known to respond differently to the incentives and disincentives related to family planning and contraception. The population growth imbalance is very stark between different communities in Assam and Kerala. In both those states, the TFR of Hindus has declined far below the replacement rate of 2.1, but that of Muslims is 3.16 in Assam and 2.33 in Kerala. As a consequence, both in Kerala and Assam, one of the communities has thus entered the contraction phase, while the other is still expanding. Population indeed is a glaring challenge in today's world. Hence, a humane approach to population control appears to be a timely and rational step. Population explosion in some parts of the globe does not remain a local issue, but turns global eventually. People from those parts do not necessarily remain confined there, but migrate to other parts too, burdening the entire world. Case in point, the refugee population, like Rohingyas today, is a collective problem for the subcontinent. Bangladesh offered Rohingyas the option of willful vasectomy in their camps, which could have been a wise administrative step. Experts also feel childbirth eligibility needs to be customized, but such an evaluation can be subjective and hard to arrive at. For example, one has to keep in mind the legal provision of multiple marriages for Muslim men. If a man marries 4 women and gives birth to 2 children per wife, he alone would end up parenting 8 children. Hence, until uniform civil code is passed, Muslim children should be ideally counted per father and not per couple. Arguments of personal liberty being hampered by the law of population control don't seem to hold. While the right to sex may be fundamental, but the right to give birth has to be viewed in the larger context, not only for the betterment of society, but also the future generations. India today has the world's second largest population with only 2.4% of its land base and 4% of water reserves. The problem of population is a collective humanitarian issue. Its solution, while may be complicated, has to be arrived at through collective consensus.